Hello everyone, good afternoon. We are doing our study in the book of Revelation. We are going to be in chapter 12 today for this lesson. We just did chapter 11 this morning, and chapter 11 was about the two witnesses that were in the temple, and the false prophet or the Antichrist gets them and kills them, and their bodies are left on the street for 3.5 days. And then God breathes life into them. And it's a great study. It's very interesting. So continue to read. I would encourage you to read from chapters 1 through chapters 12 and just keep reading that part, what we've talked about, and move along as we move along. So we'll get right into the study. I have prayed for us today already, as I always do. I need it, and you guys probably need it to listen to me for sure. So Revelation chapter 12 verse 1, he says, "And now a great sign appeared in heaven, a woman clothed with the sun and the moon under her feet, and her head garland of 12 stars." Now, first thing he says, it's a great sign that appeared in heaven. All right, we're in heaven. And it's not an actual woman. It's a great sign. Now, she represents Israel. And so she's clothed with the sun, the moon under her feet, and a head of garland of 12 stars. So she's illuminated. She's bright. And, you know, we can't totally identify this woman, this sign. But again, it's believed she is Israel. Now, there's people out in California. There's these California preachers. They're female preachers. And they say that she represents, that she is them, is what they say. People get very confused about what they read and what they hear and what they listen to. So make sure when you're listening to preachers or teachers that they're telling you the truth and that they're reading scripture to you or along with you. Anyway, most believe this woman represents Israel, the chosen people of God, chosen to be the light of the world, and that's what she's representing. Not often do we see verses that really focus on a woman, and so the sign is this woman. And she's referred to as a great sign. Here's a picture of her, the artist's pictures. All right, and she's in heaven, and it says she's then being with child, she cried out in pain to give birth. So this woman is pregnant, and she's crying out in pain for childbirth. And the child in her belly is Jesus. This represents Jesus in her belly. So think about the description of this woman. She's with child. She has all these stars around her head, the moon, the sun. And, you know, what would your thoughts be if you were to actually see her? You know, would it be creepy? Would it be scary? Would she be beautiful? Would she be breathtaking? Who knows how we would react? But this is the sign that we see right here in chapter 12, and she is pregnant with Jesus, all right? There's a representation here. And in verse 3, it says, "And another sign appeared in heaven, and behold, a great fiery red dragon, having 7 heads and 10 horns and 7 diadems on his head." Now, that's a crown on his head. And it says another sign, all right? This is the second beast. The first one we talked about in the last chapter. This is the second one, and it's a sign. And I'm going to explain these beasts to you in more detail later. But this one has 7 heads and 10 horns. Now, heads are political leaders. That's what heads are. And horns are political as well. They're like the thinkers and the leaders. And then the diadems are the crowns. That's what they're talking about. It's a sign, a beast. It's not a big red dragon animal thing with all these heads and all this stuff on him. That's not what it is. It represents political. Have you ever heard that politics and religion don't mix? That's what this is about. I'm not going to go into detail about the dragon today, but you'll catch on a little bit more later. All right, we have to stay focused on chapter 12 and what we're reading right now. We can't get off on all this other stuff. So it says that this dragon, his tail drew 1/3 of the stars from heaven and threw them to the earth. Now remember, Satan has evil angels and threw them to earth. So if he's in heaven and he throws them to earth, I don't want to be on earth, and I know you don't want to be on earth, and we're probably not on earth. So he throws them to earth, and the dragon stood before the woman who's ready to give birth, and he wants to devour her child as soon as it is born. So if you look at verse 4 in your Bible, the word child is capitalized. It's showing us that this is Jesus. That's been Satan's motive forever, is he wants to devour Jesus. That's what he wants to do. And so this is what he's doing. I have another little picture here. I guess I'll show you that picture. It's hard for me to see if you can see it. But there's the angel, and this is how John is describing this beast, all right? And again, this is how it's described for sure, but it's not a beast like that, okay? Again, I'll dissect that later, but it's not a beast like that. So the dragon standing before the woman, and you know, I wouldn't want a dragon standing before me when I gave childbirth. I can tell you that. Today's Mother's Day, and I can remember. I can remember. You forget it, but then when you go into labor again, you remember it again. And one of my babies was 10 pounds. That would be Zeb, and Andy standing in front of me was scary enough because I think I wanted to beat him up. He actually had a broken jawbone, he had a broken eye socket, and he had a broken cheekbone. Softball had hit him in the face on the 4th of July. And Mark Wright, one of our dear friends, great softball player, threw the ball and it hit Andy in the face. And so his face was broken, but you couldn't see that it was broken. There was no sign on the outside, but it was broken on the inside. So I'm 9 months pregnant, and I go in to have Zeb, this 10-pound child, a few days later. And so while I had him natural, I did not even have a shot, a pill, nothing. So I'm having him naturally. And so what I would do is I would grab Andy's face, because that's the maniac that I became in this labor, was I would just grab his face, and he would say, Sherry, please let go of my face. And I would let go, and then I would grab it again. So I say that because I can relate to this dragon standing before this woman. I would be a maniac if this dragon was standing before me while I'm having childbirth pains. So this dragon wanted to do simply more than take this child, take Jesus. He wants to devour him, it says. He wants to devour this child as soon as it's born. So she bore the male child, capital C, verse 5, who was to rule all nations, that's Jesus, with a rod of iron, and her child, capital C, was caught up to God and his throne. So we know this is God. This is Christ. It's a male child. The capital letters prove that. He rules the nations, and he sits with God on his throne. He's who sits with God on his throne. So there's the confirmation that this is who this child is. So the dragon did not succeed in devouring this child, even though that's what he wanted to do. So it says, and the woman fled into the wilderness, where she has a place prepared by God that they should feed her there 1,260 days. And remember, I explained that is 3.5 years. So the woman fled to the wilderness, where she had a place prepared for her. This is the church. This is Israel. This is God's people. So she runs to a place that God prepared for her for 3.5 years. And God predetermined this. It's a safe place for her. The dragon will not be able to devour her or her child. She will be completely safe for 3.5 years. This is God's protection. All right? So then we move on, and it says, then war breaks out in heaven. We're in heaven, and war breaks out. Michael is the war angel, and he and his angels, he had angels that fought with the dragon, and the dragon and his angels fought. So here's kind of a picture of, dragons and Michael and the angels. Here's another picture for you to visualize what I'm talking about. Okay? So Michael and Michael's angel and the dragon angels get into a fight in heaven. Where am I? Okay. But they did not prevail, nor was a place found for them in heaven any longer. Talking about the dragon. Michael won this fight. So the great dragon was cast out, the serpent of old called the devil and Satan, who deceives the whole world. He was cast to the earth, and his angels were cast out with him. I wouldn't want to be on earth when this happens. So he calls them here in the scripture, the dragon, the serpent of old, the devil, and Satan. The dragon, I have these stupid little things that go on in my head. I don't like anything that's dragony. Like, don't buy me a purse with a dragon on it, or, I don't want anything with dragons on it, because to me it represents Satan. Because right here it says, so the great dragon was cast out, the serpent of old, that snakes, who likes them, called the devil and Satan. So he has all of those names, and he tries to deceive the whole world. And his angels and him are cast to the earth. And it says, then I heard a loud voice saying in heaven, now salvation and strength in the kingdom of our God and the power of his Christ have come. For the accuser of our brethren, who has accused them before our God day and night, has been cast down. Now, This is the martyred souls. Remember a couple of weeks ago we talked about the martyred souls, and they wanted God to avenge his name, not them. They died for believing in the Lord and proclaiming the gospel. They were martyred for that. And they asked God, how long are you going to let people just, try to destroy you? And so when this happened, when Satan was cast out and his hosts were cast out, these martyred souls start speaking up again. And it's them that are saying this in verse 10. They're saying, now salvation and strength in the kingdom of our God and the power of his Christ have come, for the accuser of our brethren who accused them before our God day and night has been cast down. They're so happy because now it has happened. They are rejoicing about this fight and that he is gone. That is the martyred soul speaking. And then it says, and they overcame him by the blood of the Lamb. These are the martyred souls. They overcame by the blood of the Lamb, by the word of their testimony. And they did not love their lives to the death. Therefore rejoice, O heavens, and you who dwell in them. Rejoice, who dwelling in heaven. Woe to the inhabitants of the earth. Woe, it says. So obviously Christians are not the inhabitants on the earth. I mean, some are going to be saved, but the Christians probably are in heaven already. It says, woe to the inhabitants of the earth and the sea, for now the devil has come down to you having great wrath, because he knows that his time is short. So the devil's going to wreak havoc on the earth. He's been thrown down for good. Christians don't get this woe, but non-Christians do. And the martyred souls, they say, they overcame by the blood of the Lamb and their testimony. That's what they're talking about. That's what they were all about, and they overcame by that. The same way you and I should. We should overcome by the blood of the Lamb and by our testimony. We all should have a testimony for the Lord. And it says, and now when the dragon saw that he had been cast to the earth, he persecuted the woman who gave birth to the male child. Israel, Jesus, God's people. Satan loses the fight, and his target becomes the woman. The woman represents Israel, and Satan wants to kill all those who follow Christ. She represents the birth of Christ. And Satan had so much anger towards Christ that he focused on the woman because he knew that he could not get to Christ. So that's what he did. We've all had that kind of happen in our lives. There's people who may not like us or want to get to us in some way, shape, or form, so they'll pick somebody else to disturb about us, to get to us through somebody else. But the woman was given wings of a great eagle, that she might fly into the wilderness to a place where she was nourished for times and a half a time from the presence of the serpent. All right, a time and a half a times, that's 3.5 years. She's going to go into the wilderness and be protected. Now, it says the woman was given 2 wings of a great eagle. When I teach the book of Ezekiel, this great eagle more than likely represents the United States of America. And she was given the wings of a great eagle. And I'll explain that another time too. I wish I could have all of y'all with me all the time in my Sunday school class so that we could talk about these things, and we could go to Ezekiel and I could show you what it's talking about. All these countries are talked about, and there's one country left out, and that's the United States of America, and she's being protected by the United States of America right here. And it's called, there's a name for it. All right, I'm not going to get into it because it's political. So Satan was not able to destroy this woman, so the serpent spewed water out of his mouth like a flood after the woman, so that he might cause her to be carried away by the flood. He didn't want her to go to the wilderness to be protected, but the earth helped the woman, and the earth opened its mouth and swallowed up the flood which the dragon had spewed out of his mouth. So he tried to use a flood to destroy her, but God just wouldn't let it happen. And even the dragon was enraged with this woman. Now, he wasn't just mad, he was enraged. There's a difference in wrath, anger, just being mad, or being enraged. That's pretty mad, enraged with the woman. And he went to make war with the rest of her offspring. Who's the rest of her offspring? The Christians who keep the commandments of God and have the testimony of Jesus Christ. So he was enraged with this woman. And even in Genesis, it says, I will put enmity between you and the woman, and between your seed and her seed, capital S, talking about Jesus. Same thing. Same thing's going on here. It's a representation of what happened in Genesis into Revelation. Same thing with the woman, all right? And the seed. It's the same thing. Look it up, mirror it, study it. I can only share with you not even 50% of what I need to share with you here. But the other 50% or whatever's left is up to you, all right? Or else we need to hang out a little more and have some more in-depth Bible study. So this seed is capitalized in Genesis where it says, I will put an enmity between you and the woman and between your seed and her seed, capital S. Speaking of Christ, the offspring of Christ. And it says here that offspring of Christ who keep the commandments of God and who have the testimony of Jesus Christ. So here's our lesson for today as well. We need to keep the commandments of Christ, and we need to have a testimony. Thank him for your testimony. And remember, there are people who don't have a testimony, and we need to have one, just like the martyr souls. They had the testimony of Jesus Christ. We need to have that testimony. They overcame by their testimony, and we need to have that too. I don't think we share our testimony enough, but we have to be very careful of when we do that, is that we don't talk about us. It's not about us. We do have a testimony, but it's about Jesus. Don't make that testimony all about you, because people are not going to listen. You can't save anyone. You can just share the gospel with them, and it's Jesus who does the saving. So you have to share your testimony, but you got to make it about him, not about you. So overcome by the testimony, by the blood of the Lamb. And thank God that you have a testimony again, because there's some people who don't. Okay, guys, I'll see you next week with 2 more lessons.